Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the First in Class podcast. This is a podcast where we explore excellence in individuals who have created great success and mastery in their life through different areas. Today, I have the honor of hosting Lorne Abony. Lorne, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming. I know your schedule is extremely hectic and busy. I greatly appreciate it, and it's an honor to have you on the podcast today.
Cory, it's great to be here. I'm honored to be invited, delighted to be a guest here.
Fantastic. So Lorne is essentially a serial entrepreneur. His many successful ventures include the 2001 co-founding of Fun Technologies, an AIM, AIM, and Toronto Stock Exchange TSX listed company. In 2004, as CEO of Fun, he became the youngest CEO of a listed company on the TXS, and he eventually sold Fun in 2006 to Liberty Media for 484 million Canadian dollars. He has significant capital markets experience, having raised over 1.4 billion through public and private debt equity markets, and current roles focus specifically on wellness, medical, cannabis markets, as well as technology. Lorne is an ambassador of New Brunswick. He is one of the founders of the University of Austin, Texas. He owned a tennis team. He has great experience in the business world, and it's a pleasure to have you on today, Lorne. So tell me what you're up to. I want to get right to this this latest venture that you're involved with. I'm involved as well, but I want you to tell the people what your intention is, what your focus is, and what you hope the end result to be.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, as you alluded to, and we're incredibly grateful, you're one of our investors and one of our very important investors. So thank you for being an investor. The fund is called Texas Venture Partners. It's a $50 million fund. We're focused effectively on investing in companies that are safeguarding Western values by investing in next generation defense technologies. Dare I say we over-index to Israel. I have been a long-time early stage investor, and I've always over-indexed to Israel, not just because I'm a proud Zionist, but because you're 5.5 times more likely to get a unicorn parlance for $1 billion outcome from an Israeli tech investment than you are from a U.S. investment, and dare I say, 15 times more likely than a Canadian investment. So just from an asset allocation point of view, it's sensible to over-index to Israel. So the defense tech space is one that has been massively disrupted over the last several years. We see it with in the current war playing out. You see that the Houthis are sending $80 drones that they bought on Alibaba, and we're shooting them out of the sky with $3 million missiles. So that's not sustainable. We invest in companies that do things like signal jamming, signal interception, GPS scrambling, etc. I think it's one of the reasons, one of our investee companies, I think it's one of the reasons that the Iranians haven't done a massive swarm attack. So very, very fun project, and accomplishes really 3 of my goals, which is making money, investing in Israel and in technologies that defend the West, and making Israel and the West stronger. So thank you for your early support and quick check writing.
Yeah, well, I know a winner when I see one, buddy. So it's my pleasure to be a part of this venture. You mentioned your love for Israel. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You created success early on in life, which is extremely impressive. How did your upbringing impact that? And tell me a bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors. And I was always passionate about the state of Israel. I was always passionate about the concept that this could never happen again if we had a home that we could all go to if, God forbid, anything like an October 7th happened again. And so that was a big driving force in kind of everything I thought about and been doing, Zionist and pro-Israel things for ever since I can remember. The first and second Intifada, I was bringing victims of terror to Toronto to do fundraisings for them so they could get back on their feet and have reconstructive surgery and all of those things. And that was back in the late 1990s or early 2000s. How did my upbringing, affect? My upbringing was really everything. It really motivated me. I believe strongly in Jewish values. I believe strongly in education. I believe strongly in the family unit. So my Jewish values helped drive my sort of worldview. My parents were, although they were divorced, they got along well, and they were very, very consistent in making sure that I was very focused on being a good human being, but being good at school and my school sort of accomplishments, whether it was my 2 law degrees practicing corporate law at a large law firm in Toronto or my MBA from Columbia, really helped sort of drive my kind of success. It's what I try and instill in my 4 children, which is education is the building block of everything. And I think that's a very Jewish value. Absolutely.
You created great success. You were one of the youngest founders of a listed company on the TSX. Tell me about that experience, getting involved in a massive company early on in life, and what was that like? And the experience of going through that, getting a company ready to sell, selling it for a significant amount of money, et cetera.
Yeah, no, they were interesting times. It started. My roommate and sort of closest friend at the time, a guy called Andrew Rifkin, was the founder of Cryptologic, and I ended up on the board of Cryptologic, and so sort of in the late 90s, and you could sort of quickly figure out, I was practicing law at the time, but you could sort of quickly figure out that large markets were available to young people. I was young then, I'm not young now, but so watching the Cryptologic experience, I kind of transformed what I'd learned at Cryptologic to start an online games business, not to be confused with gambling. And it grew, massively. We had 54 million registered customers that broke down into 2 segments, 35 million casual games customers and 19 million unique fantasy sports customers. And we're listed on the TSX and we had some household names as early investors. John Albright was our kind of first outside. It was JL Albright at the time. The firm was our first outside investor. And then we were developing a game that worked really well with the Game Show Network. And we sort of started to pioneer something called participation gaming. Participation gaming was basically playing online contemporaneously with a television show. And so that game was called Lingo. And lo and behold, Liberty Media owned the Game Show Network and said, who the heck are these guys driving this type of revenue? How is Lingo growing so quickly? And it was really because of us. So they took an interest in our business and we got to know them really well. And obviously we're great partners, and it culminated in an acquisition in 2006. So it was a great experience and a seminal experience for me, obviously. It was a remarkable experience taking a company from startup to listing to acquisition.
Yeah, and provided a great foundation and experience in what you would later do. Then from there, what was your next venture?
Yeah, so I stayed on as part of the Fund Technologies, was sort of part of the Liberty group of companies. And I stayed on there till the end, I think it was December 31st or right to the end of 2007. And in early 2008, I began to invest in a music business. That was a music upload business, and it made about as little sense then as it does now. And so that was quickly a bad investment going nowhere. But I realized that even though the business was losing money, we'd actually generated a bunch of user-generated content. So people were uploading their music. It was the days where, it was 2 years prior, it was a couple $100,000 to create a good music composition, and now it was $10 to create that. So we had about 5 million user-generated content tracks, and we'd sort of run out of money. So I took over as CEO temporarily. That temporarily was 8 years, and I recognized that this asset of royalty-free, like I said, roughly about 5 million tracks of royalty-free music would be very valuable in the background music and messaging space, where the biggest cog was content. And so began to make some acquisitions in the background music and messaging space, and that business grew to be a very large business. From me, basically, to about 780 million in revenue, about 135 million in EBITDA. We did the background music and messaging and in-store media in about 580,000 locations globally, offices in 47 countries, about 3,300 employees. So it was a great experience. It was more of a roll-up. In other words, we bought a lot of companies because when we looked at the P&L of existing, we bought a company, for example, called Muzak, which was a lot of folks will know wasn't, for a lot of people, it's an epithet for elevator music, but it really wasn't great business. And if you looked at their P&L, you'd see that a lot of their costs came from royalty, and we were able to insert our royalty-free music in there. So another great experience. And then after that, around 2012, I began to run my own family office, which means different things for different people. For me, it meant kind of investing in early stage businesses where I could be impactful, make a difference, help the management team, help grow the business. So that takes you up to about 2012, where I launched the family office, and then up to, basically after October 7th, I realized that I wanted to double down and solely focus on Israel. So I moved my family office to be almost entirely Israel focused.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you're such a modest individual for what you've accomplished. I know you don't like talking about yourself a lot. As you know, the purpose of my podcast is really want to inspire other individuals to, create the things that they want in their lives. And that's why I love having people like yourself on here to share some of the foundations that have helped create your success. What would you say are some foundations or building blocks that you used inside of yourself to create this level of success?
It might sound a little glib or colloquial, but there's nothing more exciting than building a billion-dollar business with your brain. So I get a lot of sense of self-worth from that, and it permeates through almost everything I do. And so because I like doing that, I always like the people I work with. I often become good friends with them, and it becomes sort of inextricably linked with my being. So people, often say, make sure you love what you're doing. But if you really love sort of building a business, you're going to, by definition, love what you're doing. So I love what I'm doing because I love building a business from scratch. I love starting from nothing. And I think I love the feeling of sometimes you think that the sky is the limit, and sometimes you think the sky is caving in. So, and it can be the same day, and it can be from the same set of facts. As
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur.
For sure. It's a double-sided coin, right? And that's, there's always a double-sided coin. There's, you have the aspect where you can create, like you said, the sky's the limit. And there's the aspect of sometimes you don't know if you're going to be in business another day. So it's, you have to have a special and unique personality to be an entrepreneur, because you're out there on your own a lot. It can be lonely.
100%.
And you have
100%.
you're dealing with yourself all the time, and your mind and your thoughts. And a lot of people are relying on you to make sound decisions. I love studying the mental aspect of success, the mindset of individuals that have created success, and sharing some of these secrets. I once read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And
I read it too. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah.
Beautiful book.
And he talks about the space between stimulus and response. And what I've noticed in working with, Fortune 500 executives, extremely wealthy people, individuals that have created great success in their life, is they all have this trait of not reacting right away to the stimulus and then controlling their emotions. You seem to be well in control of your emotions at all times. How has that helped you to create success? And could you speak further to that trait?
Yeah, no, Hey, it's a really cool and interesting question. Look, I think the longer you can wait to make a decision, option value inures, right? And so, there's that very early Stanford test of 5-year-olds where they're given one cookie. They're told they can have one cookie immediately, or if they wait 5 minutes, they can get 2 cookies. And you can tell a lot about the future trajectory of that child based on that decision. But I read Viktor Frankl's book too, and obviously it's the backdrop is he's a Holocaust survivor and sees the world in a very unique way. But I definitely think you have to be thoughtful, considerate. Life is very, very multifactorial. And take as much information as you can, and to use a Canadian metaphor, hold the puck as long as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And another message is that we can always create. The one thing they could not take away from him was his ability to create his own reality, to decide for himself. They could not take away, how he viewed things and his perspective, and what he filled that space with between the stimulus and response.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And look, that goes to Jewish values a little bit too. You asked early on how my parents impacted my life. I can't remember if it was my mother or my father. I believe it was my mother, but both of them for sure would have said similar. But my mother would always say, we've learned as Jews that we can be kicked out of countries. They can take our wealth away from us. They can do everything. But what they can't take away is your education and your mind. And so kind of a similar point that again, I think it's one of the principles of Judaism and Torah and Talmud that teaches us that notwithstanding what the externality is, as long as you have sound mind, and that's in the form of education or otherwise, nobody can take that from you.
Yeah, that's such a great point, man. And the thing is too, is that when you look at real success, it's about creating things that no one can take away from you. And when you have that mindset, especially as I know you had mentioned, and I saw in your bio, you were an incredible tennis player. You played for, you represented Maccabea. You've played in professional or semi-professional tournaments with professional tennis players. You owned a tennis team. But as you get older, I'm a golfer too, and play competitive golf. And it's like your skills are going to diminish over time. We're going to get older. Our bodies don't work as well. Like 25-year-old versus a 50-plus-year-old. Like it's just your body you don't move the way your mind thinks you can do it. That's why I stay away from tennis because I think I can do everything, but I can't move as well. But your mind can get stronger, right? And that's something that people cannot take away from you. Your skills are diminished.
One of the nice things about business, there's no aging out in business. I mean, to a point, there probably is sort of mid 80s, 90s. But whether it's Rupert Murdoch or Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger, who just passed, he was almost 100. There's really no aging out in business, and the alacrity of your mind really doesn't go unless you suffer from it, Parkinson's, some form of disease. But you don't age out in business. And it can have every bit of the competitive spirit of sport, but the rewards are there, notwithstanding that you get older.
For sure, absolutely. What do you do when you're not building like $1 billion business? What do you do in your spare time? What do you do for fun and enjoyment?
I get asked that question a lot. So. It's a couple things. I'll go back to the point I made before. I have never, ever loved doing anything and felt that what I'm doing is as important as what I'm doing now with Texas Venture Partners. I'm about as proud a Zionist as you can get. I'd probably be tied with you. But, I think Israel's at a crossroads, and being able to put money into Israel just makes me feel remarkable. And putting my money and putting people like your money into Israel. That's a long answer to say I'm doing that 110 hours a week. I really am. I'm also not one of those people who lies to myself or my family or others and says, that I'm one of those dads that at 4:30 I come home and the phone's off and it works off. And, I tell my kids that I'm a business dad, and I am a business dad. And so that means a different set of things. They respect me for being a business dad, but they also know that dad may be on a Zoom call at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, or dad will often take a phone call or have to send an email, because I'm trying to be true to myself. I'm not, and I don't know anyone who is the type of person who can work 35 hours a week and take long lunches and be done work at 4:30 and turn off and be super successful. So I think that it would be great to say, hey, at 4:30, I'm 100%, focused on my family. I'm 100% focused on building for my family. And my family is everything to me, but I'm still a business dad, and I'm still working 110 hours a week, no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, and I think that's really great in what you're saying, because this is who you are, and what you're teaching your kids is that, look, if you find something you love and you pour your heart into it, this is what creates happiness for yourself. This is your life, your choices. And, I have a mentor, his name is Tim Grover, and he was telling me a story once where, and he writes about it in his book called Winning. And he talks about, how this guy was a coach to Michael Jordan for 14 years, Kobe Bryant for like 15 years, Fortune 500 executives all over. He now works with NFL football teams, the team owners on strategy. And, his job and that he loved was traveling constantly, and his 9-year-old daughter comes in and she's crying, and, she says, "Dad, why do you have to leave?" And he says, "You know what, honey? Because I have to go. This is what I do for work. This is what I do to support our family, and I have to leave." And she's like, "Well, what if you make less money? Could you stay home?" And it's okay. I don't mind if you make less money. And she's crying, and he has tears in his eyes, and he says, "I gotta go. This is what I do." And although it hurts inside, he is showing her that you've got to be who you are, no matter what that is. And I think that's the best gift you could really teach your kids, to go out and to do something great and be great in this world. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about inspiring other individuals, teaching other individuals to be yourself and go out and chase what you really want, and, focus on that, and then inspire others to do the same. So I really respect that you know who you are.
So look, I don't think I could have said it any better. And so, when the kids' lens is, and I've had this with my kids, which is, "Hey, Dad, we don't need any more money. Why are you going to work?" And my kids understand, certainly the older ones do, 16, 13, my 5-year-old and 1-year-old probably don't, but they understand that is my sense of self-worth. That is what Dad loves to do. And they respect me for that. And hopefully they see the world that way. So, I couldn't have said it better than your mentor did.
Yeah. There's always, we're always teaching someone something. And then it's up to them to control their perception and how they perceive things, right? So you're being true to yourself, and to me, it also depends on what you value, right? Like, I value authenticity. I value being who you are, and creating great stuff for yourself, because the reality is, if you're one of these dads that is at home and you're not doing what you love, well, you're going to be miserable, right? So you're not giving so much back to them in that sense, because you're not taking care of you. And I know you're a giver. Like, I know your personality, and I'm the same way. And one of the things that I learned a while back is that in order to be a great giver, you have to first be a great giver to yourself, because you got to be whole and full to be able to, return the things that you want to return. And you're creating a lifestyle, and everybody's winning along the way. You're taking a lot of people with you for these wins along the way. So it's like, you've got to look at it that way as well. So I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's great. Every individual that has created massive success, I know along the way, they have some losses along the way, or they got knocked down. Can you think of a time where you got knocked down, and it could just be your upbringing, the fact that your grandparents were Holocaust survivors, that fear inside that drives you? Like what is it that drives you?
Yeah,
And tell
no,
me about a loss that you had that created this fire inside of you.
yeah. So look, I think you're successful. It's either fire or passion. Period. I think that's and for me, it was always fire. It was less passion, and not, I liked games and kind of liked background music, but that wasn't what was driving. Was fire, and you know, a lot of my thinking comes back to our Jewish roots, and I know you and I are identical on this. Coming out of the ashes of the Holocaust, there are times where I think about what my grandmother went through, and I'm never going to let that ever happen again. And so I think that fire, honestly, has been, there wasn't much good that came out of 6 million of our people in ashes, but certainly the resolve to continue to fight and to, never again, it's kind of really been my driving force um, ever since I can remember.
Yeah, and yeah, and I took October 7th really hard too. I mean, I was crying for days and days and days, like even into the months.
Me
And
too.
I still think about it because my thing is I love children, and to see what transpired there, it's traumatizing, but it's also extremely hurtful. And actually, we shared a text together. I don't know if you'll remember this, but the way you described it, it's like you got exactly how I was feeling. You said I go through incredible grief to, essentially burning rage, like anger, and it's it's great that we all stick together as a community and support one another, because that those comments made a huge difference for me. So,
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for that, because that's exactly what I was experiencing. Because it's like you see people you love, and children, and people getting hurt, and the things that we saw were awful.
Yeah, look, so I think I probably feel the same way today, 370 days after October 7th than I did, which is really two emotions, and you refer to them, which is interminable grief. My grief continues unabated, and unbridled rage, and my rage continues unabated. The backdrop of where we're at in the society, I think I follow you on social media. We feel the same. The vicious sadism and the woke culture, which is basically, the woke culture, which is victimhood, and whoever is more powerful is by definition the oppressor, and whoever is less powerful is by definition oppressed. And the virtue only inures to the benefit of the oppressed. And that's just been basically taken from Western society and dropped on the Middle East, and that's how the world is seeing the Middle East conflict. And I think we all know better, frankly. And when you see a world is upside down, and then you see what happened as it is, and then you see what happened on October 7th, and you see leaders, dare I say, like your prime minister, who has, to my mind, no moral character, has no moral clarity whatsoever. And you see that visited on a society, it's very hard if you're a person of good moral character to not react. And that's how I came up with Texas Venture Partners, because frankly, I took that, and we'll go back to that, bifurcating it into two things. I took that interminable grief and unbridled rage, and I said, okay. And like you, I mean, this wasn't an all strong posture. My wife had to come to me about 6-7 weeks after October 7th, and I was lying on the couch in a fetal position crying. And she said, we can't keep showing our children that you're like this. We just can't. And I used to not even be able to say anything without tears filling up in my eyes. And I still have that, but I backed into wanting to help our people be strong, make money, because I am at the end of the day a capitalist, and I think that the best resources flow to capitalist enterprises and not to charitable enterprises. And look, I gave as much tzedakah as I humanly could. For those of you who aren't Yiddish, that means charity, as I humanly could after October 7th, but it wasn't enough, right? It's capitalism grows GDP, capitalism continues to sort of evolve on its own. So I took those feelings, which, look, I wish that I don't like how we got here, but I took those feelings and I'm trying to channel them into good efforts. And again, I've got to put credit where it's due. I picked up the phone to call you to see if you wanted to be involved. I don't even think you let me finish the sentence, and you were asking me where to send the check. So it takes a group of people to do it, and there's a good example of. I literally don't think you let me finish the sentence. So you need supporters.
Yeah.
You cut me off and said, what are the wiring instructions? I don't have to hear much more. So, credit to you and others who've invested and who are doing the right thing. But I think we all, or a lot of us, see that the world's upside down, up is down, down is up. And we see these universities that we used to hold in such high esteem. I went to, McGill, and I practiced law, and I went to Columbia Business School, and all these institutions in high regard. And then you see these people talking about things, river to the sea, which is obvious they don't know what the river or the sea is, but they talk about, whether it's blockades, but they don't know anything about the Intifada, and they just don't know. They don't even know that the Palestinian name was created by Yasser Arafat, and Palestine used to be the passport of our people, and the basis for which this comes from is just so off. So that's, again, I think if there's anything to take away from this, is that you can take your emotions and channel them in the most purposeful and intentional way.
Yeah, it's so well said, Lorne. So well said. And it's, because the message out there is always, be positive. And well, that's only half of who you are, right? You have a positive side to yourself and a negative side. And sometimes the real winners and the real successful people in this world, they take all emotions, they embrace them, and then they use them to create success, right? It's like if you got lemons, create lemonade with it. But it's we're not always going to get up every day and feel good, right? Like this is a differential between people who create, great success and individuals that, sort of stay the same, is that you have to move beyond your feelings, your mind, your thoughts, your actions, the things you do have to go beyond your feelings. And you took those feelings and you embrace those feelings and you use them to create fuel for yourself to, do something you love, give back, inspire others. I mean, it was easy for me. Like you're an inspiring guy. Like I was inspired by what you stand for, who you are, the foundations of your success. You're a great person. So like, it's my pleasure to be involved in that. And I want to be surrounded by individuals that are like that. That's how I enjoy my life. That's how I, create my success as well. So
Thanks, man. Right back at you.
yeah, for sure. You've been extremely generous with your time. I want to end the conversation like this. I always do, because I think it's an important aspect of life. What do you want and you might have to think about this. What do you want your legacy to be when it's all said and done? All these incredible businesses you've created, all these ways you've given back, charitable giving. By the way, yourself and your wife are one of the founders of the University of Texas, Austin, which is incredible. What do you want your legacy to be when it's all said and done?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm going to be really glib, but I mean it. Just a good person who did his best. Have I made mistakes? There are times where I'll say to I've got a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old boy, "Hey, Dad made a mistake. Dad messed up." Right. But as long as they remember that at the end of the day, I was a good person and I did my best and I led with my heart. Well, that's to me, it's basically all you can do. And if that's how I'm remembered, I think that'll be somewhat, hopefully a very true characterization by the time I'm done, and I'll be good.
Yeah, that's incredible. And one last point. I mean, individuals that can admit that they make mistakes, that's a confident person in my view, because everybody makes mistakes. And I think that's teaching your kids as well, that they don't have to be perfect. Along the way, you're going to strive for the best that you can, but along the way, you're going to make some mistakes. And I think it's critical to realize that it's not about making the mistake. It's first of all, you acknowledge it, right? Because in order to get better, you have to see like where you didn't measure up to what you wanted, your standard. And I know you're a guy with incredibly high standards for everything you have in your life, for the way you conduct yourself, for the businesses that you're in, for your investors, for the shape you're in, your relationship, everything. So that goes a long way for sure.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to, for those of you who don't know, Cory and I have been good friends for a quarter of a century, and or actually, so maybe a little more. I want to think I'm probably younger than I am, but right back at you. Honored to be your friend, and thank you for having me and for hosting this and doing all you do.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you for being who you are, buddy. Look forward to connecting at the end of the month.
That's great. Looking forward to it.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Cory. Be well.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
So that's a wrap on our First in Class podcast with Lorne Abony. Really appreciate any questions, comments, or feedback. We're always looking to grow and learn and get better at what we do so that we can provide more information and more value to the viewers. That's what's most important to me. We are on Buzzsprout, YouTube, video, Spotify, and Apple. And greatly appreciate any comments, more followers. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate everybody that's tuned in, helped us out, and it's such an honor to be sharing with other individuals how they can create success in their life. Make it a great one.